Hey! Hey! My net broke! I didn't sit on this rope for you to be making all this noise. It's too early for all that. He too loud. They need to turn that down. I ain't come here for all that. I'm sorry, but when my net breaks, I can't control what I say. When my net breaks, I can't control what I do. I got my little script here, but my net just broke. And I don't know how to act sometimes, because when I think about Amen. Good morning. How y'all feel this morning? Hey, thank you for asking. I am awesomely blessed, marvelously blessed, and it is good for us to be here. Later on, I'll tell you how awesome of a church you are, but right now I need to preach because there is a word from the Lord. If you would meet me in the gospel according to Mark, and chapter number 14. And I solicit your prayers this morning. This message will take on different meaning to different people. Whatever context you arrive in, there's so many different ways you could look at it. But I can tell you up front that this is a message about relationships. Not so much so in the demographic sense of men and women, husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends, parents and children. Not in the demographic sense, but more so just the dynamic of certain relationships. Whether it's God's relationship with us, our relationship with each other, and as you'll see in the text, Jesus' relationship with his disciples. And so I'm going to vacillate between all of those throughout the course of this message, but I solicit your prayers as we go through this. I'm going to be reading from chapter 14, beginning with verse 27. And I believe the King James Version will be on the screen. And I'm going to read from the NIV version, which I rarely ever do. But there's some emphasis that I want to put on this. And again, you just follow along in whatever version that you have. But I promise you, it is safe to read from this particular version for this text that I'm dealing with. Mark 14 and 27. Jesus saith unto them, you will all fall away. Jesus told them, you will all fall away. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. Peter declared, even if they all fall away, I will not. Truly, I tell you, Jesus answered, today, yes, even tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times. But Peter insisted emphatically, or as the word says, vehemently. He says again, even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you. And all the others said the same. I want to pause right there this morning for the purpose of our preaching as the Holy Spirit guides us. And I simply want to use as our topic of conversation, time will tell. On your way to your seat, tell somebody, time will tell. I've been holding this sermon for about 3 months. For no particular occasion, I just have to give it to you as the Lord gives it to me, but tell somebody around you, time will tell. Amen. every few years, maybe even every few decades, we are blessed as a people or as a culture, maybe even as a country. We are blessed with certain figures and certain individuals who become like sages to us, their wisdom, their intellect. We're blessed every few generations with those wise people that leave an indelible impression on us. One such person in our generation that I can remember was Dr. Maya Angelou. Passed away 2 years ago, and she is known because she has blessed us with books like I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. She propelled her people with poetry like Still I Rise. She inspired women by reminding you that regardless of what society says you ought to look like, I don't care if you are a figure 8 or a figure 0, she says you are a phenomenal woman. Anybody know what I'm talking about here? Every few generations, we are blessed with those kind of people that give us wisdom, that give us insight. And so very recently, right before her passing, there was one particular phrase that she became known for. It was not a book. It was not a poem. It was simply a saying. You know, wise folk just drop knowledge on you in their regular conversation. And she was having a conversation, and she dropped this little nugget of wisdom. And I believe Oprah kind of capitalized on it and made it even more famous. But Dr. Maya Angelou said, when somebody shows you who they are, you need to believe them. In other words, there's going to come a time when people will reveal their character, where people will reveal their true self. And at some point, when a person shows you who they are, ain't no sense in trying to change them. Ain't no sense in trying to fix them. I wish I had a church here. Ain't no sense in trying to make them over. The fact is, when somebody shows you who they are, you need to believe them. Every now and then, we are blessed as a culture with those kind of individuals that drop those kind of nuggets of wisdom on us. But when I hear what Dr. Angelou said, when I process, when I try and make sense of the words that she gives to us, I'm sure on the surface, all of us would agree. Yes, when somebody shows you who they are, you need to believe them. Ain't no sense in trying to change them. Ain't no sense in trying to fix them. But yet there arises an issue. And it serves as point number one. Here's the issue I got with what Dr. Maya Angelou said. Problem with that statement is the person you meet initially is not the person you'll meet eventually. When somebody tells you who they are, shows you who they are, you need to believe them. Well, problem is the person you meet at first ain't the person you gonna meet at last. Let me see if I can get a little closer to you. People tend to send their best self in order to gain a first impression. People tend to show you their best face in the initial meeting. Why? Because the person you meet initially is usually the one I want you to meet. Have I got a witness here? It's like a job interview. You'll go there with your resume, and you fix that resume to reflect your best self. You ain't going to tell them that you are habitually late to work. You ain't going to tell them that you stole pens and staples and paper from the last job. You ain't gonna tell them the reason you got fired is because you took an extra 45 minutes for lunch. You ain't gonna tell them, folk, that you're never on task and that you spend more time on social media than you actually do doing work. You presented your best self. And unfortunately, they met the real you eventually. Again, point number one, the person you meet initially is not the person you meet eventually. How many of y'all can be honest and admit it takes a while? Don't look to your left or right now. Just look at me now. It takes a while to get to know who you're really dealing with. The person you met initially was put together. The person you met initially was accountable and responsible. The person you met initially had every quality and characteristic you could ask for. But time will tell who a person really is. And when we look at the words of our text in context, again, I told you this was a sermon about relationships. I ain't necessarily talking about man and woman and all, husband and wife and boyfriend and girlfriend and all that stuff. No. This is just a dynamic of relationships and some things you can apply generally to your own life and maybe even to some of your horizontal relationships. But what you understand is that God is a God of relationships. He wants to have a relationship with us. He wants us to know him, and he already knows everything about us, but he teaches us things about our own selves through our relationship with him. And so how does God go about that? This is point number 2, and we'll get to the context here. God uses our context in order to establish a connection. God uses our context. It'll make sense in a minute. In order to establish a connection. What does that mean? God meets you where you are in order to take you where he wants you to be. God will meet you in whatever condition, whatever situation, whatever calling, whatever context you currently find yourself in. That's where God meets us, but that's not where he wants to take us. When Jesus first met Peter, he wasn't even Peter. That's where I'm going to need my Sunday school crowd here. He was Simon. And when he met Simon, who would eventually become Peter, he was not a preacher. He was not a minister. From what we know, he wasn't even a religious person. Jesus found him in his current context, which was at the seaside doing what he does. He was a fisherman. And he and the boys, Andrew, James, and John, and the rest of them were out there all night at the sea fishing, trying to get paid. Understand, this was their living. This was their job. This was their occupation. This was the context that Jesus found Simon Peter in the first place. And so they had been out there fishing all night. The Bible says they hadn't caught anything. And so Jesus decides to get, of all the boats that are out there, Jesus decides to get into Peter's boat in order to preach a sermon. Because understand, church in those days was almost like church last Sunday at 8:30. They didn't have no microphones. I wish I had some help in here. Sorry for the live stream crowd. We missed you, but we sure had some church in here last Sunday. They didn't have sound systems. They didn't have live stream access. So in order for Jesus' voice to carry to the masses, he launched out into the deep waters, got into Peter's boat, used Peter's boat as his pulpit podium, and the waters, the waves of the waters, carried Jesus' voice out to the masses. Good thing is you can have church even when you don't have all the amenities available to you. Have I got a witness here? And so after he gets done in Peter's boat, with Peter in his own boat, then he says, I want you to drop your net for a catch. Watch this now. Peter, Simon, in his own context says, preacher, this ain't your area of expertise. I've been doing this a long time. I ain't no rookie at this. I'm a fisherman by trade, and we've been out here all night long and have caught nothing. I appreciate what you just said. You are a good preacher, but you really, Jesus, need to stay in your lane. Smart people are dangerous to be around sometimes because you always got to be the teacher even when you need to shut up and learn something. You always got to be the one that's going to school everybody, even God. So Jesus says, you a fisherman, huh? You an expert at this. He says, how's that working out for you? You've been out here all night and hadn't caught anything. How's that intellect working out? How that 30 years of experience working out for you now? He says, drop your net. Peter says, I really don't think you know what you're talking about here, but watch this now. At your word. I need a Bible reader here. He says, at your word, I will drop my net. And sure enough, he dropped that net. And y'all know where it's going. He brought up a catch, a drought, a net full of fish. Watch me now. So much so that he had to call the boys to come help him. I need to pause right here. I know I'm supposed to be preaching, but I need to pause and preach to about 50 people who have seen God be so good to you, you couldn't even contain it yourself. You had to call your cousins to come get some of this here. The Lord been so good to me. I'm getting from the overflow now. I need some folk close to me to come get some of this goodness because God done blessed me so to where I can't even contain all of his blessings. Tell somebody, he been good to me. I can't keep it to myself. I tried to hold it together this morning, but I heard the choir sing and my net broke. Somebody ought to help me here. I tried to be cool during devotion, but then my net broke. I tried not to holler while the word was going forth, but my net busted wide open. I know you don't usually holler this early in the morning. I know you usually don't shout because that's not your personality, but is there anybody here can think about the goodness of the Lord, can think about all he's done for your life, think about all the stuff he did for you when you thought you had more sense than God? I know you're usually quiet, but slap somebody and tell them my net just broke. Hey, my net broke. I didn't sit on this rope for you to be making all this noise. It's too early for all that. He too loud. They need to turn that down. I ain't come here for all that. I'm sorry, but when my net breaks, I can't control what I say. When my net breaks, I can't control what I do. I got my little script here, but my net just broke. And I don't know how to act sometimes because when I think about tell somebody my net broke. My net broke. I'm sorry if I'm getting on your nerves, but my net broke. The fish all over the place. Blessings all over the place. Favor all over the place. I'm trying to be quiet, but my net broke. And once it breaks, I can't get it back. And so it don't take all that. No, my net broke. It do take all that. You don't know. I shouldn't have made it through July. I shouldn't have made it through June. I shouldn't have made it through 2015. My net just broke. My net, my cup overflows. I know it's early, but I need a net broke praise. But now he connected with Peter on a level Peter never would have imagined. When that net broke and Andrew, James, and John had to come get some of what the Lord had done in Simon's life. Some of us are blessed because your grandmama's net broke. Some of y'all here this morning because your dad is net broker. Some of y'all here because of the prayers of somebody else. Somebody held on long enough for you to come and get some of that blessing, for you to get some of that favor. It wasn't even my net, but I ate from it. Y'all trying to make me preach this morning. Listen, he wants a connection. That was his goal, to establish a connection right there in the context. Okay, you a fisherman, all right? I'm going to use that context to get a relationship with you. But here's the issue. Before you start shouting about fish, because the point is, God's greatest desire is not to prosper us, but to prepare us. I ain't saying he don't want you to prosper. I know what the word says. I would that you would prosper and be in good health, but y'all always leave out the most important part. Even as your soul prospers. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? God ain't just about you having a job. God ain't just about you having prosperity. God ain't just about you having a position and some money and a car and a house and some clothes. That's not God's greatest desire, although he will give you some of those desires. But his greatest desire is not to prosper you, but to prepare you. Come here. He used that context of the fish, and he said, Peter, from now on, I know your context was fishing for fish, but from now on, you're going to be a fisher of men. God says, I'll take you from where you are. I'll use your music to give you your calling. I'll use where you work every day. I'll use the gift I gave you for my glory. You don't know me outside of this context, so I'm going to use the context that you're in order to prepare you for something greater. Can anybody here testify that you've seen God use your context right where you were at that moment and showed you what you were supposed to do? This is for people who trying to figure out what your calling is in life. I don't know what the Lord want me to do. All I got to tell you is where you at the moment. Wherever you are at the moment, God will use that context to make you fisher of men. See, if Simon had had his way, he'd have said, you know what, you're a pretty good magician. You need to stay with me. We need to take this show on the road. We'll never want for fish again. And we can just hang out together and you can help me multiply fish all day long. Jesus said, I was never here for fish. It was never about your context. It was about using your context to bring you into a greater context. Come in, Jacob Chapel. Yesterday was not about book bags. You got to see it bigger than that. Yesterday was not about a handout or a giveaway for folk who could have went and got it themselves, as some of y'all would say. Yesterday was not about my name getting out there or your name getting out there. Yesterday was about us being fishers of men, because if you feed me on a Saturday, I might come on Sunday to say thank you. If you help me on a Saturday, I'm going to wonder what kind of church is this that will help somebody that they don't even know. And I'm going to show up Sunday to see what kind of God would make you give when nobody gives back to you. What kind of God would make you bless people when they don't bless you back? What kind of God would use some broke people to open doors for some old broke people? What kind of God would take us in that context but tell somebody it's something greater? What's my point? God's desire is not just to prosper you. It was never about fish. It was about souls. I want to make you a fisher of men. God, there's so many different ways I can go with this. Because he says, because if anything, as a fisherman, that's going to make you an even better minister. It'll make you an even better servant, because you realize you can't clean a fish till you catch a fish. That's a message for all these folk that think people supposed to be perfect so they can come to church. Folk got to be clean so they can sing in the choir. They got to be qualified so that they can stand on the door. Jesus said you can't clean a person until you catch a person. Yes, I wish they would act better. Yes, they need to get it together. But let's be honest. God let you hang out a long time before you got cleaned up. God let you sit out here every Sunday and you still smell like fish. Somebody ought to help me here. Your attitude still stinking and you've been here 20 years. Your attitude still ain't together and you've been in church all of your life. You can't clean them till you catch them. It's another context. God's greatest desire, it's not to prosper you. It ain't about fish. It's about faith. It was never about mullet. I don't even eat mullet, but it ain't about mullet. It's ministry. It's not about salmon, if you're fancy. It's about souls being saved. He says, I'm preparing you for something greater, Simon. I'm preparing you for something you're not even aware of. But the question that's got to be answered is, how do I get from seaside to sanctuary? How do I get from my current context to where God eventually wants me to be? This point number 4, if you taking score, listen. God educates us through our experiences with him. He teaches you about him and he teaches you about yourself through your experiences with him. If you were here Thursday night, we talked about going through, because Paul said that tribulation gives you experience and experience gives you hope. You don't get those kind of things unless you go through it. There's certain things you don't know about God until you go through. There's certain things you don't know about yourself until you go through. It's very easy to say what you would do in a hypothetical situation, but until you actually go through, that's why God gives you experiences in order to educate you. So I wrote down a few because I got to zip through this. I ain't got but about 15 more minutes left because we already saw where he met him at the seaside. That was one incident. And then as soon as that was over with, then all of a sudden word got out that Peter's mother-in-law was sick. And through that experience, Jesus went to Simon's house and healed his wife's mother. Through that experience, what he learned is that God is a healer. See, you can hear folk testify all day long about he's a doctor in a sick room and he's a lawyer in the courtroom, but that's just church talk until you go through it yourself. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Until you had a doctor to walk away and don't know what to do. That's when you learn how to call on the doctor. It's one thing to hear a choir sing about a mighty God, but it's another thing when you met the mighty God for yourself, because he was mighty in your situation. He was mighty in your life's battle. He was mighty through the last storm that you went through. He's mighty even right now, because even in your weakness, he makes you stronger. He learned that Jesus was a healer. How many of y'all have learned some stuff about God? It wasn't because the preacher told you. If anything, all the pastor did was confirm what you already knew. That's why your neighbor jump up and holler sometimes, because you like, my God, who told the pastor what I was going through? No, God already took you through a situation. All I'm doing is confirming, looking for some witnesses that already know what I know about me and what you know about you. I've learned that he's a provider because I've been broke. Somebody ought to help me here. I've learned that he'll rub those two end pieces together and feed you when you're hungry. I've learned that he'll stretch out a quarter tank of gas. I've learned that he'll stretch out that baby formula. Somebody ought to help me here. I've learned that he'll fight your battles if you just step back and let him do it. I've learned, but I couldn't learn until I went through. And so he learned that. Then somewhere there about Matthew chapter 16, Jesus takes them on the outskirts of town on the coast of Caesarea Philippi, and he asked the question, whom do men say? That y'all been to church before, that I, the Son of Man, am. In other words, what are they saying about me? He says, well, some people say you are Elijah. Some people say you're John the Baptist. Some people say you're Jeremiah, one of the other prophets. They think you're a good man that did good things. But then Jesus said, well, now, who do you say? I know what them folks at the fairground said, but now, you who have been with me for a minute, who do you say that I, the Son of Man, am? And who spoke up? Good old Simon Peter. He said, thou art the Christ. Thank you, Jesus. The Son of the living God. Watch this. Jesus said, blessed art thou, Simon Bar Jonah. Jonah was his daddy's name, Simon, who came from Jonah. Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah. Watch this, because flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you. It was my Father which is in heaven. I just got to stop right there. I can't go no further, because in your educational experiences, God reminds you that some stuff you can't get at A&M. Some stuff you can't get in a classroom. Some stuff you ain't going to know about life until you actually have it revealed to you. Is there anybody here can say I'm halfway educated, but some of the stuff I learned at the school of hard knocks. I learned at the school of go through. I learned at the school of bumping my head and skinning my knee. It wasn't my degree. It was not no university. It was not a professor. It was my life experience and what the Lord showed me through those experiences. He says, I'm going to educate you. And I'm going to show you that even on your smartest day, you still dumb. Somebody in here need to start giving God the glory for some of the stuff that you know and some of the stuff that you're doing. How dare you lean on a degree more than you lean on God? Some of you are too smart for your own good. Flesh and blood didn't reveal that he was a doctor in a sick room. Flesh and blood didn't reveal that he was a way out of no way. He said that the Holy Ghost, the Spirit of the living God, revealed that to you, and now you know who you are. I got to move on. He says, from now on, your name is Peter, Little Rock. That's what Peter means. It means little rock. And upon this rock, I'll build my church. Your name is Little Rock. And upon this rock, not you, Peter, but your profession of faith. I wish I had a new members class here. Not who you are, but who you say I am. That's the rock that the church is built on. I'm so glad Jacob Chapel ain't built on me. I'm so glad that ain't no ministry built on me, because I'm just a little rock. And it would do all of us good to understand that we are all just little rocks connected to the solid rock. Anybody know what I'm talking about? My hope ain't in old Jermaine Simmons. My hope ain't in Jacob Chapel Baptist Church. My hope ain't in who's sitting in the pew. I wish I had some folk early in the morning who know where your help comes from. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name, on Christ. Solid rock I stand. All of the ground is sinking sand. In life, you're going to have those moments. I got to move here. This is a long sermon. I ain't even halfway through. I got to move. I'm trying to get you to see how he educates through experiences. And then later on, Jesus decides to take Peter, James, and John up to this mountain. It's called the Mountain of Transfiguration. He takes them up there, and God allows the glory to shine upon Jesus. And he says, this is my beloved son, hear ye him. And then Moses shows up. And Elijah shows up. And all of that was Old Testament confirmation that Jesus is who he declared himself to be. And I'm telling you, Peter, James, and John were just in awe. It's almost like when it was dark all this time and then the lights turned on right at the offering. You're just kind of looking around like, wow, it's just amazing. And Peter got so excited and he said, Jesus, it was good for us to be here. It was good for us to be here. And he got so excited. He got so overzealous. He said, let us build y'all, you, Moses, and Elijah, a tabernacle. Let us build y'all a throne. You know where you're going to sit, Jesus, because you in charge. We got your table reserved. But now, let's set up another one for Moses and Elijah. Again, Jesus had to educate him. Jesus had to school him. Jesus said, we didn't come here to sit on no thrones. Oh, so many places I can go with that. We didn't come here to sit and be elevated and celebrated. He says, we come to serve. And if you're going to be great, you need to serve somebody. I know you excited because you just caught up in the moment, but we don't start building thrones for ourselves the day after we do an outreach. See how quiet it gets? We don't start building thrones for ourselves just because we had one good day of helping somebody. We don't start elevating ourselves because we did one good thing and now all of a sudden we deserve special recognition. Just go on and say it. These little $400 chairs we sitting in, and I regret it, I'm telling you I do. These expensive chairs we sitting in, this is not a throne. If you notice, I barely sit over there. I come in here when it's time for me to do my thing, whatever. I barely sit over there because I just don't like the pretense of what some people think that represents. Like we kings or something. Like we just kind of sit up to be worshiped and somebody come up here and feed us grapes while we wait to preach. And from the outside looking in, there are people who will covet that seat, who will covet that position, not knowing that the greatest of you have to serve and suffer. And he said, it ain't about that. And so he had to educate Peter and James and John and the rest of the boys. This ain't about seats. Yeah, it's about serving. I move on. And see, if you notice from the beginning of our conversation, I told you who you meet initially is not who you meet eventually. Jesus had to spend time with Peter for all of them little personalities to come out. Sometimes Peter was right on it. Other times he was just wrong. Sometimes Peter was accurate, thou art the Christ, son of the living God, and then he just does something so idiotic, talking about, let's build a throne. How many of y'all can be honest and admit, as a Christian, you're hit and miss? I'm talking about I have my good days as a Christian, and then some days I wonder if I'm even a Christian at all. Somebody ought to talk to me here. I have my righteous days, and I have my... Y'all know me, my ratchet days. There are some days when I'm showing up at the pinnacle of my spirituality, and then there's other days when I'm at the lowest of the low. Jesus had to go through these experiences with Peter so Peter could get to know God, but also so he could get to know himself. But here's the curveball. The problem is, you listen to Maya Angelou, and so you said that, you know, when somebody show you who they are, you need to believe them. And so you believe the first person you met. And as a result, here's the warning. Don't give exclusive access without intense investigation. Some of us give people elevator access too quick. You know, in order to get to that top floor, you don't just have a key. You got to have a card and a code to get to that penthouse level. But some of y'all give away your codes day one. You've given exclusive access to people without intense investigation. There's some folk you don't even know, but because they had one good thou art the Christ moment, now you've given them access and you didn't stick around long enough to meet the other people. Come here, don't y'all get uptight on me now. How many of y'all can be honest and admit that it wasn't until 6 months later that you met that other person? It wasn't until a few years later, and you like, if I'd have known that this was you, I might not have wasted all this time on you. Had I known you was shady like that, I would not have done what I did for you. If I'd have known you was going to act that way, if I'd have known you was going to put a knife, I wish I had some help here. If I'd have known you was fake like that, if I'd have known you was going to tell what I told you to everybody else, but I couldn't find out until later. Everybody has layers. Everybody got other sides, including you. Don't you be shouting like, yeah, that's right, Pastor. Preach about them fake people. Preach about all of them. No. I'm talking about you. You got other sides to a point where sometimes you surprise yourself. I mean, I thought I had been in church long enough. I thought I've been getting enough word in me, and then the right situation came along. Then a situation came, and it revealed something about me that I didn't know. God says, be careful. Don't give people exclusive access to you. I don't care how good they is. How many of y'all are like me and got trust issues? I'm being honest. Now, can we self-diagnose this morning? Like, your initial response to people is like, all right, what you want? I just told you I ain't looking for no new people. I ain't looking for, so what's your motive? What it is that you want? I got issues, and you got to prove yourself. The reason you're that way is because if you're honest, you know you got 5 people living in you. You know you got shade potential. You know you can be crooked at times. The reason why you have such trust issues is because you believe everybody is like you. God says, don't give exclusive access without some intense investigation. Well, Pastor, how do I find out? Because everybody put their best face on. How do I find out? God says, time will tell. Give it some time. Let a little while go by. And before you know it, one mask comes off. Then under another set of circumstances, the other face comes off. And then when things really get intense, that's when the other face shows up. When they get angry, that's a different face. You got to be around folk long enough to see how they act when they are angry. And I need to know how you get when you're angry, not with me, but with other folks, so I can know what to prepare for. If she got a habit of throwing stuff, I need to know that going in. Y'all understand what I'm saying here? I was going to wait till 11 o'clock to say this, but you can't fall in love with a profile picture. Don't you know they pose for pictures? Don't you know they can touch up a picture? No, I need to know who you really is. I need to know what the other faces that are behind the profile. Tell somebody, do your research here. If you were applying for a job under me, and I call you in for an interview, I would take your resume and I would sit it to the side. And I would look you square in your eye and I would ask you, what's your weakness? Because see, this you on paper, this the best you. I already know this person because that's who you want me to know. No. What's your weakness? Because your weakness is what'll sink my ship. Your weakness is what'll have me giving statements to the news trying to fix up what you done messed up. See how quiet it getting right in there? Your weakness is what have us talking to insurance companies trying to settle lawsuits that you brought on by your actions. What's your weakness? Your weaknesses don't show up on paper. You've been stealing, you just ain't got caught. I need to know your weakness. Can I hurry to tell you that when somebody gets caught in something, it was not their first time. All I'm saying is don't give exclusive access without intense investigation. You need to know who you dealing with. But you don't know that until time, I'm about through now, goes by. And so this is still Jesus and Peter. And they're having their high moments and their low moments. Peter has his good moments and he has his bad moments. And so we arrive to the place where they are having the Last Supper, the Lord's Supper, right before Calvary. And after they have the Lord's Supper, this is my body, this is my blood, so on and so forth. He washes their feet. And after they sing their hymn, they go out toward the Mount of Olives. Jesus said, oh yeah, by the way, one of y'all gonna betray me. He said, one of you all are going to stab me in my back. And again, because there's some shade in all of us, all 12 of them said, is it I? There's a crook in the room, and everybody looking down the row. Is it me? It's almost like when your mama or when your dad or somebody, when they tell you to come here, and you start thinking about everything you done all day long. You like, now I wonder what it is she could be calling me for now. I don't think she didn't even know about that yet, so that can't be it. I don't think he found out about that. I don't think the teacher called this week, so I don't know if they even know about that, because all of us got some shade in us. He says, and I'm finally at Mark 14, he says, you all are going to fall away. I know we've been hanging out for 3.5 years, but y'all gonna leave me hanging. I know that you've shown me some of your strengths and I've seen some of your weaknesses, but he said, in just a little while, you're gonna abandon me. Because it's already been prophesied that when the shepherd is struck, the sheep scatter. When the leader goes down, the flock scatters. I would like to think that y'all would hang in there if something jumped off, but Jesus says, y'all gonna fall away. Can I tell y'all one of my greatest fears? And I'm telling you all because you are the mature crowd, and y'all will be the ones that really hold things down in case something ever happened. One of my greatest fears is that if something ever happened to me, if I ever came, unable or incapacitated, if I'm in a coma for 6 months, my fear is that some of y'all would scatter and just go right back to what you're used to. Like, are we really learning anything around here, or are we just doing it because Rev said it? Do y'all have the ecclesiastical fortitude to be able to maintain and see that the path we've been on is the right path, and that even if something happens to me and I'm unconscious and you can't call me and ask me what to do, you can't call me and get no direction, do y'all have enough ecclesiastical fortitude to be able to stay in that right direction, or will you start infighting? That's my fear. Have we really grown, or did we just swell? Are y'all going to try to snatch the power back if something happens to me? Because that's what you wanted all along. Are you going to try to go back to the way you did things 11 years ago? Because that was just Rev's idea in the first place. I didn't like it with all these folk in here anyway. I hope they do leave. I liked Jacob Chapel when it was smaller. That keeps me up at night. To the point where I will preach myself into a coma, almost kill myself down here. Because I'm scared that if I detach, ain't going to be no church. God forbid I go get some rest. God forbid I don't show up on a Sunday. Where were you? I done preached 35 Sundays in a row and decided to take one. Where were you? But you ain't been here for 6 Sundays, and then the one you come back, I'm not just so happen to not be here. Now I'm slacking? He said, y'all gonna scatter. I'm gonna be stricken, and the sheep are gonna break up. You would like to think that everybody who say they on your team will stay on your team? You would like to think that your friends will stay your friends? You would like to think that those that are loyal to you will remain loyal to you, but tell somebody, give it time. And he said, you will scatter. Peter said, not me, Lord. I'm closing now. He said, not I, Rabbi. Even if everybody else falls away, I'm with you. How many times have I heard it in 11 years? Pastor, I got your back. What you didn't tell me was there was going to be a knife in it when you got through with it. I'm with you. I got your back. Even if everybody else fall away, I'm your best friend. See, your friends compete for your friendship, and they want you to think that they are the best friend, even though you got 3 other friends. And even when the 4 of y'all are hanging out, they always like to make sure you know I'm your bestie, right? They'll tell you what the other 2 said about you so that maybe you can think more of them than the other 2 friends. I'm telling you, all your friends phony. I'm just letting you know. All your friends phony. Time will tell. Jesus said to him, I got to close. He said, today, even tonight, before the rooster crows in the morning twice, Peter, you gonna disown me. I know you said you was going to always be there. I know you said that I could count on you. But he said, I'm telling you, you going to deny me 3 times. Now, you would think that Peter would have learned from the past that once Jesus says something, just let it go because he Jesus. He knows everything. But here go Peter again saying more vehemently. He going to double down on his commitment. He said, even if I got to die with you, I will never disown you. And because Peter was the talker in the group, everybody else decided to get behind him and chime in. And the end of the text says that all the other disciples said the same thing. If I were to go up and down each pew and ask you, are you with us? Are you on board? Do you support us? Are you a true member of the church? Every last one of y'all would say yeah if the mic was in your hand. Because you're not going to tell us up front that your word don't mean nothing. Back in January, raise your hand if you can give $1,000 between now and June to help with this outreach, to help with this parking lot, to help to us to put on the passion play. All right, if you can't do 1,000, how many of y'all can give $500? I'm with you. Got your back. Our church doing great things. Point number 5, we out of here. Even as a disciple, you will disappoint. Not here to beat up on you. I ain't here to bash you. I'm looking at my own self and I'm saying that even as a disciple, there are times when I've disappointed. Disappointed myself. Disappointed folk horizontally around me. You disappoint your family. You disappoint people in your community if folk know you. How many of y'all can admit that even as a disciple, I disappoint? It's real lonely up here right now, I'm telling you. Out on this limb by myself. Even as a preacher, I disappoint. Even as a longtime Christian who should know better, who should be a better example for other Christians, who should shine a brighter light in some dark places, even us sometimes disappoint. How many of y'all can testify? I should have knew better. Should have knew better. Grandmama said, when you learn better, you do better. Sometimes you bumped your head, learned your lesson, and still didn't do better. You knew. But as a disciple, you will disappoint sometimes. Can I jaywalk on to the close here? I said you'll disappoint yourself. I said that you disappoint people horizontally around you. But here's what I didn't say. I always wrestle with this idea of disappointing God. See, now you disappointing God. Do we disappoint God? I'm closing, son. Don't worry, I'm closing. Hurry up, Pastor, hurry up. Listen. I wrestle, like, is it possible to disappoint God? It's a theological argument. I'm still wrestling with it. Is it possible to disappoint God? In order to answer the question, you got to answer it with another question. What is disappointment? I'm finna close. You ain't going to see me coming. Listen. Disappointment is when I thought you were one way, but time revealed that you were another way. Disappointment is when I had a high bar of expectation for you, but through your imperfection, you disappointed my expectation. Disappointment is when I didn't see it coming. When you ask the question of is it possible to disappoint God, the emphatic answer is no, because God knows everything and ain't nothing you can do to surprise God. Point number 6, and we rolling out of here. Jesus predicted your predicament, and he was already prepared to pay the price for what you did. Is there anybody here know how the story goes? Jesus got arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane one Thursday evening, and sure enough, Peter tried to be one of them hardcore disciples. He pulled out his switchblade, because even though you're saved, you still carry it. He pulled out his switchblade and he cut off one of the soldier's ears, and Jesus picked up the ear and put it back on the soldier. Jesus said, we ain't finna die in no Thursday night smackdown. Peter probably patted himself on the back and said, the rest of y'all didn't do nothing, but I tried to fight for Jesus. The rest of y'all were cowards, but I tried to fight for my pastor. But then one Thursday evening, when they left the Garden of Gethsemane, and then early one Friday, they were marching Jesus from Judgment Hall to Judgment Hall, and in the distance, who was following along? Oh, Peter, trying to see what was going on. He was at the courtroom windows, listening to Pontius Pilate, listening to all the kings and governors accusing our Savior. But then somebody recognized him. He was off in the corner, but they said, ain't you a deacon at Jacob Chapel? chapel. He was trying to hide out and said, didn't you preside last Sunday? He was trying to hide out and he said, don't you sing in the choir? Is there anybody here ever tried to hide when you should be holy? Well, when they asked Peter, was he a disciple? Peter said, no, I don't know the man. That was one time. And then another girl rolled up and said, I know you're one of them because you talk like one of them. You talk like you know him. You act like you know him. Peter said, I told you that I don't know the man. That was 2 times. And then finally, the 2 folk ganged up on Peter and said, I know that you are a member of that church. I know that you go over there to Jacob Chapel. I know that you've been hanging with the rabbi. Peter said, doggone it, dead blasted, I told you I don't know the man. And as soon as he said those words, the Bible said the rooster began to crow, and it reminded Peter of what he promised and how he broke the promise. Is there anybody here that ever disappointed yourself? You ever let anybody down? But the good news is Jesus predicted it. And tell somebody, Jesus is prepared to pay for it. And right early that Friday morning, he paid the cost for your betrayal. He paid the price for my shadiness. He paid it all on a hill called Calvary. He died. Didn't he die? He died for your sin and mine. They laid him in a borrowed tomb. Somebody said it's over now. Jesus is finished. But shake somebody's hand and tell them, give it time. Time will tell. Stay there all day Friday and all Friday nights. Give it some time. Stay there all day Saturday and all Saturday night. But tell somebody I said Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hands. Well, we got to get out of here. But I got some good news for folk who have messed up. I got some good news. If you ever broke a promise, for every time you mess up, the Lord got some mercy to get you back on track, because they tell me when Jesus got up, the women were at the open tomb, and he told them, woman, he said, go tell my disciples and Peter that I'm waiting for them. Shake somebody's hand and tell them the good news. Tell them you dysfunctional, but you're still a disciple. Tell them you messed up, but you still a minister. Tell them you a mess, but you're still called. Tell them you dirty, you low down, but the Lord still loves you. Is there anybody here glad for a second chance? Anybody here glad for his mercy? If the Lord been good to you, if the Lord made a way for you, if the Lord opened doors for you, say yes. Say yes.
Say yes. Yes. Yes.